Well, welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining. This is our third session of day two of Building Life Science Adventures 2022. And I can't believe how quick the conference is flying by so far. I hope if you've managed to join some of the other sessions, you're enjoying yourself. So this session is on the topic of, do role models make great mentors? And I'm going to hand you over to Ricky and our amazing panel to kind of unravel that question. But a few logistics from me first. If you don't mind keeping your microphones on mute throughout the discussion, that would be great. We do encourage lots of engagement, so please put any questions and comments in the chat box at the bottom of the screen, and our panel will try and pick them up from there. So that is it from me. I hope you enjoy the session. And over to you, Ricky.
Perfect. Thank you, Jasmine. Good afternoon, everyone. We're probably going to hear you on mute quite a few times in this session, so we're used to that. That's part of our language, so bear with us as we can. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate this is day two. I appreciate it's the lunchtime session, so we're going to try and make this as engaging and interesting as possible. I do see a number of names and some faces of people I've known over the years, so hello. But as a quick introduction, my name's Ricky Martin. I'm a biochemist. I'm a member of the Royal Society of Chemistry, and I spent the last 15 years helping talent across the life sciences as a recruiter, and I'm the owner of Hyper Recruitment Solutions, and that's the space that we work within. So really looking forward to this session. We've got an amazing panel, and I'll ask each person to introduce themselves. And I think what's quite important is we've got an experienced panel that have worked for big companies, small companies, third-party companies, direct companies, a lot of backgrounds where I guess the terms, if we use them, role models and mentors, can be seen in different things, and we'd like to try and get to the bottom of that and have some healthy debate where we can. So I'll go quiet for a moment and I'll introduce Claire, if you wouldn't mind starting.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ricky. Yeah, experience, that is all of these here, isn't it? I'm Claire Thompson. I'm Chief Exec of Agility Life Sciences. We are an award-winning formulation development CDMO. So essentially we develop formulations for very badly behaved molecules to give them the best chance of success in preclinical studies and to future-proof them to clinic and commercial. I'm also entrepreneur in residence at University of Cambridge, and I chair and am involved with a number of initiatives around enabling, empowering and engaging with women in science and education.
Thank you, Claire. And Claire's also an exceptional runner. I've gone running with Claire before and she put me to shame. So I'm just going to put that out on the table.
Yeah, the running shoes are on a lower shelf behind. They're not quite as pretty.
Thank you, Claire. John.
Yes, so Jon Green. I'm currently Chief Operating Officer of a company called IONTAS, which is a contract antibody phage company based in the south of Cambridge. Prior to that, I was Site General Manager for an AstraZeneca site, which was previously a MedImmune site, which was previously Cambridge Antibody Technology. And I've sort of grown from a 10-person company, grew that into an 800-person organisation at Cambridge. I've also got a few non-exec directorships, Social Enterprise in Cambridge, the Stevenage Biocatalyst, a security consultancy in London. But the crown jewels of my NED work is I'm chairman of One Nucleus. Have been for some time, fabulous organisation, and I really enjoy doing
that. Perfect, thank you, John. Particularly as a One Nucleus chairman, I think that's lovely for everyone to hear. That's how important this session is for us all. Mark.
Yes, good morning. My name, or afternoon already. My name is Mark Ramondt. I'm from the Netherlands, but have been living in Argentina for the past 13 years. My wife is from there. Actually, now I live between London and here. I'll get to that. I come from a corporate background, so I was with Unilever for about 16 years, did a ton of corporate mentoring, the way these big companies do that. My last role there was head of finance for global research and development. So there's kind of the connection with the scientific world. We had something close to 550 PhDs working in the organization. For the last 10 years, though, I've been working with startups, and my latest experience there is with my own company called MultiplAI. Together with two scientific co-founders, we're trying to bring universal access to cardiovascular disease screening, and actually presented at the CRIC last night, which was great, despite all the ridiculous tube striking and rain. But I'm looking forward to talking about the difference between mentoring and the kind of coaching you need when you're a startup and entrepreneur versus somebody going into a big company.
Thank you, Mark. And the tube strikes, I think they're still there for tomorrow as well, for those that need to get on one. So thank you. And last but not least, Nadia.
Hello, I'm Nadia Palace, and I'm program product, was chief operations and chief marketing general manager in a startup, worked kind of in startup and corporate world, so have seen and tried different shapes and forms of businesses, and also worked across industries. So I've been at the intersection of business and technology development, kind of driving this real world impact and implementation for over a decade now. As mentioned, I've been in very different settings, done a few different things. Most recently, I've been running an AI partnership between Microsoft and Novartis, and in particular, Microsoft Research Cambridge here and Novartis. So this was a very exciting journey, and I'm about to jump on my new one. No spoilers yet. And I also, I've been very fortunate to get very different experience, very diverse, and to learn from people, right? And I think this has impacted me a lot and my career journey. So at some stage, I decided that I'm going to give back. I would love to share it and maybe, have this positive change for someone else. So I'm also a mentor at Judge Business School. I also know someone from One Nucleus, from KQ Labs. So in a few different bits and places, trying to do a little bit of good.
Thank you very much, Nadia. Thank you. And before we ask some questions to the panel, I just wanted to kind of remind everyone, there is a chat box on the Zoom session. So please, if you have questions, put them in there. It could be a question to the entire panel, or it could be a question to an individual on the panel. So if it is to someone, please note that. That would be great. And I guess if I just start in the starting place, role models make great mentors. I think one thing that we should kind of step back is, this is all the life science sector. And I just want to be very clear, if the life science sector gets it right, people's lives truly change. And the life science sector makes a tremendous difference to how everybody lives their life. And I think the last 2 years has shown that, particularly made that real for those people that aren't scientists. So I guess where I'd like to start is, considering what a difference the sector can make, if we can help people on their career journey in the sector, whether that be through mentorships, role models, more people can make a bigger difference. And I think we need to remind ourselves of the impact. So I guess my first question across the board is to almost break down the question we have. We've got two things here. We've got role models and great mentors. So I think what would be really useful is to try and figure out the difference between the two. So if we can start with you, Claire, could you give us, I guess, what is a great mentor to you, or a mentor in South?
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely echo what you're saying around the impact that we have as the life sciences. I think it's quite clear that we haven't let the crisis of the last couple of years go to waste. The eyes of the world have been upon us as an industry, and we've shown just what we can do. Everybody's become an epidemiologist over the last couple of years, or at least they are on Facebook. But what that has enabled us as individuals and as organizations to do is show what our strengths are, show what we can do quickly, under stress. And I think it's really brought out the best in the vast majority of us. Yes, we've gone up and down our stress curves, and we've had to manage that within our own organizations. But I think that's hopefully something that we can take forward, we can learn from, and that we can be great mentors for the next generation of fantastic scientists. In terms of mentors and role models, I'll be quite open. When I was more junior in my career, I was looking for mentors, and I really struggled with what mentoring was. So someone would say to me, "Oh, you need a mentor." What does that mean? And I think in terms of the mentoring relationships that I have had, where I have been a mentor, I've been a mentee, the ones that have worked really, really well is where I've defined the thing that I want help with. Now, for me, role models are those who are in positions of leadership, who are focused on, we have a shared ethos, so they're focused on inspiring, engaging, they're focused on people and purpose, and those are the things those are the types of attributes that I find are fabulous in role models. I call them my ACE people. They're authentic, they're credible, and they're engaging. So these are the role models that I have and that I aspire to be. But in terms of mentors, really it's down to a specific piece. So I'm struggling with change management, for example, at the moment. Who can I work with that will help me through that from a mentoring position? And it's good to put a time frame around it as well. Otherwise, you know, it can get lost. It can get lost in the purpose and it can get lost in the momentum. So I guess the advice that I would give is define what it is that you want mentored on. And then if you have someone within your network that you think they'll be great at helping that, talk to them about it. Talk to a few people. And if they aren't within your network, then talk to people who are within your network about, I've got a problem with this and I need some help. Who would you recommend?
Perfect. Thank you, Claire. I guess we'll open up that question to the whole panel rather than individually. So a mentor. I love the ACE acronym. It was authentic, challenging, and engaging. Was that the three? Challenging, the second one?
It's not great with my accent, but authentic, credible, and engaging. Challenging is also good as well. If they can, I find coaches, challenging coaches are fantastic to get the best out of you. Yeah.
Perfect. So I guess what is a mentor to us all? It's a big word. Sometimes a scary word, just like networking. We can come on to that one. What is a mentor to everyone on the panel?
Maybe.
Good, Nadia. No, you go first.
Thank you. Maybe I can continue building on what Claire just said. And I love the ACE acronym, but I think there's a distinction between trying to, between aspiration and building up new skills or kind of complementing yourself, right? So it's almost like short-term and long-term journey, right? And I love, I have the people and throughout my career, I've been blessed with people who have been aspirational to me, right? I was looking at them as the role models. However, what I have learned is that on this long-term journey, what you also want to be mindful of is kind of preserving your own uniqueness, right? And preserving yourself. I think when we're talking about mentorship and, engaging with a mentor, I very much, I'm still, I would say, quite early on my journey as a mentor, on my conscious journey as a mentor, right? I think I've done it before, not really realizing what was happening and the framework around it. And now kind of I'm engaging in it purposefully, right, and meaningfully. But I think the difference is that when you set the objectives and when you understand what you want from it, and when you agree on this, so you almost like have a contract between yourself, right, and your mentor, and you're clear on this, then kind of this is when it becomes really meaningful and impactful to you. And kind of this is also when your mentor starts feeling good because he or she can add value and kind of let you grow. But it doesn't mean that you really have to copy someone, right? It's rather learning from their experience. It's learning, hearing from them, but then deciding for yourself. Yeah, I think that's my take on it. Jon, would you like to go next?
Yeah, so I jotted, in preparation for this session, I jotted down what my sort of top 5 or 6 things which I think make a good mentor. So I think the first thing that a good mentor makes is he's got to care about somebody's success. The whole point of mentorship is to enhance people's chances of succeeding in a particular problem, career, whatever it is. They have to be self-aware and enthusiastic people. There can be nothing worse than a mentor that is just not interested, being put in a mentorship program, doing it because he's been told to, whatever. It's just a waste of time for both parties. The original question, does a role model make a good mentor? I actually think mostly. I have seen examples of mentors who are not great role models, but they've been very good at providing guidance. So I think they've got to sort of be a positive role model to most people. People tend to look up to their mentor. It's just a fact of life, I believe. They have to be generous with their time. a mentorship actually takes an enormous amount of time and thought. It's not just sitting in a room for half an hour having a chat. The whole point of a mentor is to provide advice and guidance, and you can't do that just sort of on the fly, in my humble opinion. They're sort of, people who make good mentors, I think, are also what I would call lifelong learners. They're people who are keen to make their own lives better, their own careers better, by learning on the fly from wherever they can. They tend to be avid readers and things like that. They provide quality feedback. There's no point in a mentor who just sort of agrees with everything you say and say, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. It's pointless. Again, a bit of a waste of time. So they provide what I would call quality feedback, not criticism, but feedback. I think the most important thing about a mentor is they are open and active listeners. There's nothing worse than a mentor that will talk over you all the time. I think I've done a lot of mentoring in my time with both junior people and quite senior people. And the thing I found is that I actually use my ears most and my mouth least. And actually, I think that is very important, because the mentorship is always about, using somebody with more experience as a sounding board to bounce ideas, to bounce sort of career choices and things off people. I can't make that choice for them, but I can give them the benefit of my experience. And I think that brings me to the last thing, is that they are sort of what I would call, they give not advice, but they give examples of their own experience and life experience. And I think that makes a good mentor even better. So those are my sort of top tips for mentorship, what I think are what makes a good mentor. Happy to discuss.
Thank you, Jon.
Maybe I can chime in just for the last little piece, and I think, Jon, you just summarized it beautifully, and both you, Claire, and Nadia brought up the most important parts. I think the what I can add maybe is the contrast with what a role model might be, and in my view, role models are far from necessarily being great people or people that are good at mentoring. I think the two have very little to do with each other, and most role models are relatively famous and extremely busy people that tend not to listen very well, at least in the startup world and in business, and those are all traits that, as Jon just outlined beautifully, are far from the things that you look for in a mentor. That's not to say that some role models can't be good mentors. I think some can be both, but they're certainly not connected.
Agree.
Thank you, Mark.
Also, if we can just add to this, I think, the dynamics over time, it changes of, your life journey, the life journey of your mentor, right? And kind of their professional journey, a lot of circumstances change. So it's not also a linear process where, you start engaging with your mentor and this goes on for years. It may be, this person has a significant impact, for a year or, at this stage of your life, and then kind of your paths go different ways, and then maybe there will be some intersections again. So it's not really linear.
Yeah, I think using negative examples as a mentor is actually quite useful sometimes, and I was the archetypal example of that, as I did absolutely diddly squat at school, and actually had no career to speak of when I'd left, or no idea what career. And it was through mentorship that I actually eventually found my sort of career. But and it was the hardest way possible, because I did all of my qualifications part-time while I was working. Hardest way ever. And that's a good example of what not to do. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. And people sort of actually identify with that, when they're talking about, well, what shall I do with a career? And I can tell you, well, this is the way I did mine, and I wouldn't recommend it as a way to do it. And that can be as powerful as somebody who's got a positive thing to say.
Sorry, and I'm going to add one last thing, Ricky, before you talk. I think there's really something about experience. So the other point I think that may not have been mentioned is the age question. So does a mentor have to be older? And in my view, it has little to do with age and much to do with experience. So I've had a mentor over the last years in science, and the person is 10 years younger than me, because I'm trying to figure out how to add value to a scientific startup. And in the same way, you know, I could use my experience to help this same person as a mentor learn about how to do business and how to structure teams and that kind of thing. So as an example of just, there's no real age issue. It's more about an experience. And I loved what you said, John, about, you know, personal experiences and sharing those and examples. I think active listening on one hand goes with to understanding what the person is looking for and needing. And then the response is, if you can give examples and useful examples of experience, the person isn't being told what to do, they're getting ideas of how they can do it. And I think a lot of this has to do with stimulating the person that is being mentored to do things in a way that you have found make things easier.
Yeah, I think an important thing is just occurred to me, this is a bit of a brain dump almost, is a mentorship program has got to actually come from the mentee. It's them that sets the agenda, not the mentor. You know, the mentee has got to come up with what they want to talk about, what they need advice on, what they're struggling with, how they can be, you know, sort of their sort of career can be enhanced, their life can be enhanced by, you know, sharing the experience of somebody other. It's not the mentor to tell them what they should be talking about. And I think that's a very important point, and you have to set that at the outset. There's no point in talking about it for hours for something that somebody's not interested in.
Well, I guess it brings us into an interesting place, because what we're saying is mentors come in all different shapes and sizes, all different levels within an organization. I think it would be fair to say, and again, we can look at this, there's no one size fits all when it comes to mentoring. That there's probably going to be multiple mentors you have over time, and it might be multiple mentors at the same point in time. I think there are two things that people need to remember. And there's a question that came into the panel a moment ago, which I think is worth looking at, because this is quite interesting. The question from Catherine, thank you, Catherine, is, has the panel found formal mentorship programs or informal programs the most valuable?
Can I answer that one to start with? Because I was part of a formal sort of mentorship program within sort of MedImmune AstraZeneca for, you know, many years, and I mentored people at all levels. But I think the most valuable ones were the off-the-cuff corridor ones, almost, where, you know, somebody would approach me because they thought I might know something about something, and actually we just, you know, end up having a series of chats about it, and then they'd go away sort of either unhappy or happy, depending on the outcome of you know, my sort of advice to them. But I think each one has their place. A lot of people wouldn't think of a mentorship program unless there was a formal one in place. But actually, mentorship comes in all shapes and forms and things. I mean, I'll give you an example of that. I'm very keen on generational differences in the workplace. And actually, you know, I've got 4 kids. Well, I've got 2 of my own and 2 step kids. But I know very little about the new generations. So I use one of my stepdaughters as my mentor for that. How would you think about this? You know, and she often talks to me. It's always over Zoom because she's at university. But, you know, she teaches me about something I know nothing about. And that's a form of mentorship, but it's informal.
John, have you done a few TikTok videos already? Is that what we're saying?
I haven't, no, I haven't got a TikTok account, I have to say. I'm a Twitter aficionado, I'm afraid.
And I guess I'll keep the question open to other people about formal and informal programs.
Maybe just to talk 2 seconds about formal ones. I've had good experiences and bad experiences with them. I think it has a lot to do with how forced the structured mentorship program is. So if you get matched with a person in a forced way, it often doesn't work. What you'll find is you find a way to work with that mentor within the program, but at the end of the day, it peters out. And for me, the great mentorships, even formal ones, end up being informal ones after these formal programs go away, because it is really a relationship thing. And I think John, you mentioned that caring was important. I can't agree more. You know, and caring goes both ways, because the best ways that relationships develop is through trust and care for each other. By the way, in the formal ones, one of the critical elements is confidentiality, so that between the mentee and the mentor, they can say anything. And even if, you know, if the person is, you know, complaining about their boss or about something in the company that might be, in fact, you know, it's a place where they can lash out and do these things, and have the mentor provide perspective or at least guidance on how to think about it. So confidentiality and trust are two of those things that I think are well structured in the formal programs, but at the end of the day, if it's a forced relationship, it doesn't become a relationship.
No, I think you're absolutely right about forming relationships with your mentee and mentor. I mentored quite a senior person within my last organisation some years ago, and that person has become a lifelong friend. You know, we both left the company years ago, but we both keep in touch and meet socially. And she still phones me up about sort of advice every now and again. But that was one of the richest experiences I've had of mentoring somebody. It was just brilliant.
I mean, I agree on this, that, you know, and I think it's a brilliant question about the formal versus informal. The formal pieces, and I've seen this through either mentoring or coaching, that the first session has got to be all about the chemistry. So do you get on? Do you share the same values? Do you share the same aspirations? Do you have things that you can talk about? And once that's in place, you then build a rapport, and you can talk about the things that the mentor, so the mentee, wants to discuss, and you can help them along the way. With, you know, informal pieces, you already know that person, so you've already got that rapport, you've already got a bit of banter and a bit of chemistry, so you know that that's there. And I think I completely agree with Mark and John. It is all about that chemistry. It's all about how that helps to build the trust and frame the conversation. Builds confidence, confidentiality, and that will lead to a successful program. I've also found that things have been really successful from the formal programs, especially when things are outside of the sector. So I'm an advisor for an organization called Lift As You Climb, which is a women's professional network. There's a mentoring program within that. There's a handful of life science individuals, but it's all, you know, it's multi-sectorial. And actually the insight that you get from people who are outside of your sector can be gold. So I'm not discounting formal mentoring programs at all. Dabble in them all. See if you find people who are within your tribe. And you know, I'm a big believer. You bring people together who will support you, will help to inspire you, and they will either be your mentors, your role models, coaches, heroes, advisors. Those who will, you know, they'll prod you. They'll go, "Are you sure about this? Is this what you want to do?" And they'll be there behind you, backing you when you need the confidence most. Build your tribe, treasure your tribe, call the individuals within it whatever you want. But it's really important that you have them around you throughout your career, and they become lifelong friends. They're the ones who you'll lift the phone to, and who will lift the phone to you.
I think a lot of what we're talking about is what is a mentor and what makes a good one. But I guess let's go back. It doesn't matter what stage you are of your career. Sometimes the earlier in your career, the more daunting mentorship feels. But let's work on the basis that I'm going to join a business, or I'm not sure I'm going to join. There is no formal mentorship program available to me. And just as a bit of a one nucleus cell, just to let you know, guys, and just to make sure, there is a free one nucleus mentorship program, which everyone can sign up on, whether they are a member or not. So there's a resource for everyone in this room to be aware of and to pass on to other people. But let's say we don't know about any of them. Luckily, one nucleus has one. Question is, how do you go about getting one? And I think this is where that whole word networking, which scares some people sometimes, is in there. Because firstly, John mentioned that the mentorship isn't set by the mentor or the mentee. So knowing that somebody is motivated to either learn something, develop in a way, or understand things, it's a really impressive thing. And it's really nice to see if someone's asked to be a mentor. And there are occasions I've done it. I've asked for different mentors for different things and either been ignored or pushed back because people are busy, they have other mentees, and there's an element of resilience. But if I just ask around the panel, how would you go about getting one if there's no formal program available to you?
Can I go first? Because one of the things I am really keen on is networking. to me, it's the most powerful tool in making business relationships. And so if you want to find somebody to talk to, get out there and network. There are loads of opportunities for all ages, be it through, I'm going to give a plug here for One Nucleus, events that we have. We hold specific networking events. There are lots of sort of journal clubs, things like that. Get out there and meet people, network, and you'll find your mentor that way. You'll find somebody you click with. You'll find somebody who's got the right experience and can just help you with your particular issue. Network, and then network again.
I think, yeah, I'm absolutely with John, and I think you need to network, you need to go out, you need to meet people, keep your eyes open, right? Keep your mindset open, and just don't be afraid to approach people and to ask, right, and to engage. A lot of times I think we build kind of our own mental barriers to engage, and we absolutely shouldn't. I think, yes, sometimes people that we want to engage with, maybe as a mentor, can be, often they are busy, they have different priorities, they're juggling, the timing may not be right, but you need to have the resilience and to this almost like entrepreneurial spirit to go out and just explore it and see where it where it takes you, because you really don't know. And a lot of this is about timing and different circumstances, and sometimes even serendipity, right? So just get in the journey, but understand what you want to get out of it. That would be helpful.
Yeah, Ricky, I'll come in on that. I want to touch on a couple of things. So one is on people, and one is on mentoring. So I often go and talk at student events. It's really important for us to engage younger people and inspire them to be part of this industry. We can't do this on our own. So I'm certainly with John on that. And I say, so what's the pharma industry? What's the business? Oh, you make medicines, so you make medical devices. No, we are a people-focused industry. People work with people. People buy from people. And that's why meeting people and engaging with people is so important. I think people get scared about this networking. Oh, how do you do it? It feels like forced fun. So how do you network with people? The individuals on this call, they're all part of our network now. So chat to people. It's all about just talking to people. Come and talk to me about my hair, about my shoes. It's one of my rules in life. If someone's got great hair or great shoes, tell them. And it's an opening line. And then just talk to them about it. So what do you do? Have you got any family? Have you been in the pandemic? Probably hear my dogs in a minute. One of them's asleep behind me. Just find some commonality that you can talk about. Make yourself memorable. And then in the future, if you've got an issue with something or you want some help with something, reach out to them. So it's got to be mentee led. So figure out what you want help with. And as I said before, if you already know someone who you think can help you with that, ask them. If they say no, fine. If they haven't got time at the minute, fine, but you can go back to them in the future. If they give you 30 minutes of their time, brilliant. If you don't ask, you don't know. But if you don't know someone who can help, ask the people that you trust. Do you know someone who can help me with fundraising? Do you know someone who can help me get access to blah? Ask. People work with people.
Claire, I loved what you said about making yourself known. I think networking is largely about that, but taking the other side of it, in large companies, I would look at networking as being what we could call cynically politics, right? So there are people that are really great at politics. I was never good at it, and I still was able to kind of build a career at Unilever and other multinationals, but that was probably because of other things. But there were mentors in my environment that helped me get ahead. I think in companies, that's why there is a slight distinction there in terms of networking, but you need to do that to be heard. And it absolutely helps to attract a great mentor if you are known as a really great person to mentor. And part of that comes with the kinds of things that you ask. So like, Claire was saying, very specifically, what do you need help with? And but it helps an enormous amount if you're already somebody that the mentor has at least heard of, right? I mean, there's a certain amount of common attraction in this, and like there would be in any relationship. So very, very good comments there.
I think also just to add on top, remember, when you're trying to look for advice and stuff, you're not asking for money. We're not going up to someone taking out £50,000. This isn't an investment conversation. This is, or even a tenner, because I've got to buy lunch. It's very flattering to be asked for help on occasion. So I really appreciate your input, Claire. I remember meeting you. Is there someone that it's a really flattering thing to be asked. So I don't think to be afraid of that. And if you push back, like, it's very rare everybody gets every job they ever interview for, right? You do have to keep in tune. And relating on to that, Anchor, I've seen there's a chat in the chat box, and thank you for putting that. You said you're a student at Birkbeck University and doing a master's by business. You sent your application within the program for mentoring and requested a mentor, but the answer was no mentor is available. There's a secondary question on there, but I guess all I want to say is, have you gone back to ask again? Have you asked again and again and again? If they're not helping you, is there someone else that can connect you to that? Is there anybody who's been through that program and you can ask them? Because it's not an ask once, get an outcome. It's be positive, be resilient, stick with it. Mentorship is great, but you have to be driven to want it. And if you ask once, that's not drive. You have to keep asking.
And it may well be, Ricky, that the university is not the best place to find the mentors that they're looking for, whereas the One Nucleus program most probably is. And I echo your sentiments about, if you ask someone for their advice, their insight, it is a flattering piece. And if you talk to someone and go, tell me a bit about you, everybody loves to talk about themselves. So that can be the opening piece. Oh, tell me a bit about your background. What have you been up to today? What is it you're interested in? People love to talk about themselves. So use it as an opening gambit.
Absolutely. And that's what I would call making you as a mentor be easy for the mentor. Making the mentee easy for the mentor. I mean, part of that also goes into, for me, what helps a lot in structured programs is formal preparation for meetings with your mentor. In informal, that's less relevant maybe, but it does help, right? If the mentor feels that the mentee isn't listening to them or isn't at least being guided, then you start losing interest, and that's like in any other relationship, loss of interest is the beginning of the end. So part of this is also putting the energy into these mentorships from both sides, but especially the mentee. I can't emphasize enough that I agree with the mentee led comment. It's got to be mentee led.
And I'm going to ask an impossible question to the panel, so apologies, but I'm going to ask it. If someone came to us and said, well, I'd like a mentor, I've got a few skills I'm not quite sure on how I develop, but there's a few people I know and I'm going to reach out to them. How many mentors should I have at one occasion? Is there a capacity? How long? How frequent? Is there anything where there is some form of expectation, putting the informal coffee break conversations to one side?
Go on, I'll go first then. I think it's there's a question just come in around having multiple mentors. I think it's definitely a good thing to have multiple mentors so you get different perspectives, because not everybody's journey is the same trajectory. We'll all do things differently. We'll all make different mistakes. Sometimes we all make the same mistakes, but it's as valuable to hear about the mistakes and the gory stories as it is to hear about the success stories. So yeah, I completely support having multiple mentors. Is there a magic number? 3 is good. Yeah, otherwise you're going to get overwhelmed with advice, but it's not the golden rule.
It's a little bit like asking how many friends can you support in your friendships, right? At the end of the day, your best friends are ones that you end up having a more strong relationship with, and that generally comes down to effort and time, or at least one or the other. And I think it's not far from the way it is in mentoring, where it's the effort, it's the time commitment, and there are limits there. So it's not about trying to get more and more mentors. It's seeing how far you want to go. And there's people that can only have one best friend, and then there's others that love to have 20 best friends, and both are fine. It depends on the person.
And I guess it's fair to say be realistic on your time, right? Because if you're trying to have mentors of self-development ever, can you actually get the job or whatever you're doing done while you're trying to do all the self-development outside of it? It is reality check of time.
Yeah, and are you able to take advantage or action on the recommendations or the guidance that the mentor is giving? I think that there's a lot of that.
Yeah, I'll echo what Claire said about, multiple mentors is good, because harking back to my little missive on what makes a good mentor, it's more about sharing experience than giving advice. And the more experiences you actually are exposed to, the better place you are to make your own mind up. But you have to have those experiences sort of explained to you in the first place. So I'm all for multiple mentors. And it goes for, the mentor has got to be careful about their time, because it's quite time consuming if you do it properly. To be able to give as I said today, the time is actually, you've got to be generous with your time in terms of mentorship. And I will echo that a mentor should only have a few mentees at any one time, in my opinion. A mentee, I think, should have as many mentors as they can find time for, because, as I say, it's all about sharing those experiences.
I had actually something quite recently where it was very new. It was a new thing for me, and I had no idea how to approach it. I've never done it before. So I reached out to a person that I know at the business school and said, maybe you know someone in your network who's been running these events and done these things, and maybe they can share their experience. And he pointed me and connected with the two people who've done it before. I came to them, with my set of questions, a humongous list of questions, maybe around a dozen, and asking only for half an hour of their time. But that was invaluable. I mean, I spoke with two people, right? But the perspectives were so different, and their experience was so different. I probably would not have bandwidth for speaking with more than two people, right? But this on its own allowed me to kind of take their experience and their feedback and their thoughts on board. And now I can decide for myself what I want to do and how I want to do things, right? And this is kind of a situation where I've become this mentee, and this was very, I guess, need-driven. So I would say having at least two would be great.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you to you each. And again, be a bit antagonistic here. Let's go back to where we started, which is role models and mentors. Role models are people that can be put on a pedestal because we're impressed about what they've done. And we had a conversation prior to this, maybe examples of people who might not be great mentors. I didn't know if we have any examples, not people we've worked with directly, that some people would call a role model, but on the other occasion would make a tragic mentor, and there's reasons behind that. If there's any examples we can share.
Yeah, I comment on this. I mean, the one I hear the most often, and it makes me just sigh every time, is Steve Jobs. Oh, he's an inspirational role model. If you've read his book, the books about him, or hear the stories, he's a dreadful person to work with. So one of my mantras, and so much so that we have it on the wall in our facility in Nottingham, is it ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. So there are ways and means of getting to an end. He was, yes, incredibly successful in terms of the company that he built, the wealth that he accumulated, but didn't create a great culture, wasn't a person with aspirational scruples. So yeah, and it's something I want to stay away from in terms of, to be an inspirational role model. It's about how you do things and not just about the end game that you achieve.
I would agree with you there, Claire, because I think Steve Jobs was a role model for some people, but actually he wasn't a very nice person. But what he was inspirational. The way he did it was probably not ideal, but he could inspire a whole workforce to work, pushing the boundaries, to use a horrible metaphor, and actually he came out with some very insightful management tips, but he wasn't a role model in the truest sense. A role model is somebody you've got to look up to, that you want to copy their example. There's no way I'd want to copy his style of management, which was bullying at the end of the day.
And I've just lifted my Dolly Parton cup, my cup of ambition that I drink from every day, an inspirational role model. So we should think, what would Dolly do rather than what would Steve do?
Thank you. And there's another question that's come in here, which leads us on to a really important point. So Catherine, you made a question about, can we speak about the benefits of being a mentor? The one thing I always think is a mentee going into that relationship on the other side is, I think mentees need to consider what value they can offer to the mentor as well, because there is a mutual benefit. And I think the more the mutual the benefit is, the better the relationship will become. So could we just have a conversation about the benefits to mentors, please?
Ricky, maybe I can go first really quick, because I think that the time that I noticed this most was leaving corporate life. And so having 25 odd years of corporate life behind me, and then using that to help startup founders to build their businesses. And I think that has really been a great experience to use that experience from a corporate life in a completely different place and in a completely different setting. And to all the other points that were made before, it's what makes I think a great mentor. But what I got out of it was I learned about startups, and I'm using that now, 8, 9, 10 years later, to build my own startups. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without all the stuff that I learned from other founders along the way. And so I think there's certainly a give and take. And I think, John, you mentioned it before, what you learn from people that you mentor, there's a huge amount of opportunity there. And as a mentor, it's also interesting to look at where you want to mentor, because you may actually find it as a kind of a bridge towards a new life for yourself. That's a really interesting question from that point of view.
I think
I go next. Sorry. I think
yes, John, now it's your turn.
There's many sort of advantages of being a mentor, and I think it's part of networking, if you like, because the youngsters of today that you're sort of mentoring will be the leaders of tomorrow, hopefully. And my experience in being in this business for more years than I care to remember is you always come across people that you've met in the past, in a much higher sort of position, and actually that mutual sort of going back to building a relationship, that relationship can be really beneficial for many reasons. But also from a mentor's point of view, it helps you improve and think about your own communication skills, how you bring sort of subjects across, and it forces you to going back to this generational thing, sort of talk to younger people in a different way that they actually understand. If I spoke to them in the same didactic way I'd speak to my dad, God rest his soul, it just wouldn't work. And you really have to think about your communication style with your mentee, because it's horses for courses. What works with one person won't work with the other. And I think it also boosts your own confidence, really, that you've got something to offer, and actually people want to hear your experiences. And I think that's it's good for your own motivation, to be honest. So I think there are many benefits of being a mentor, and I wish I could do more of it, if I'm honest.
Would it be a fair question that going into that meeting as a kickoff meeting, that a mentee is always going to be very, you would like to think always very appreciative of the time and everything? Would it be a fair question for a mentee to go in and say, how can I help you? Like, as a response question, set that out at the start, just say, is there value for me in return? Would that be a fair question to ask?
I think it would be valuable to understand, maybe to have this conversation, but not on day one, right? You've got to get to know each other a little bit more, and just understand what everyone is getting out of it, right? And I think at some point, and I think it would take time to to build the full appreciation of what each side is given. But I think that's it's a two sides kind of road, right? It's both ways. So if someone is mentoring you, at the very least, they feel flattered. But I think, very, very often it's much more than this. I find the people that I speak to, in some ways, they can be a role model to me, right? Learning about their journey, about their attitude, about how they do things, right? The questions that they ask themselves. So kind of then they reflect on this and they take, maybe this is something that I should consider for myself, right? So I think it's really a journey, and at some point you'll understand this. You may understand it.
I don't think it's expected, Ricky, that it will be that initial offer of what can I offer in return. I mean, mentoring and that tribe piece around, whether it's peer-to-peer networking, whether it's talking with coaches, whether it's talking with advisors, it's so important to me that I set time aside for it. So my Fridays, or at least half of my Fridays, are set aside to have those conversations with people that are within my tribe. So either those who have asked for a bit of my time for advice, or those who I want to bounce things off. I call them my fill my cup Fridays, because I feel like I'm giving a bit back, but I'm also, I feel like I don't know, it sounds a bit touchy-feely, but I feel like I'm getting a lot of energy in return. So for me, it's fill my cup Fridays. My wife calls it flap my trap Fridays, because I'm just talking to people all day, but it's so beneficial. As I said earlier, people work for people. It's a people business. We're all building our networks. We're all chatting to people, and it's really, really important. So for me, the whole mentoring relationship, what do I get from it? I get a sense of purpose, a sense of giving back, and that I'll get that in return when I talk to my mentors.
Particularly like the idea of energy and enthusiasm there, Claire, because I guess going into that meeting, it's a nice pick-me-up for both parties. And if you're going into that relationship monotone, I'm there because I have to be there. It's a formal process. I've been told to do it because it's good for my career. Don't bother, get out the way, let someone else have the opportunity would be advice. Apologies, John, I spoke over you then.
Yeah, no, I was just going to sort of say, building on what Claire said. I mean, I think the thing I get about out of mentoring people is it increases my job satisfaction, because at the end of the day, we're doing this because we all work in, sort of an industry, we've got experiences. I just get great satisfaction by, imparting my experiences to other people and them learning from it. It enhances my leadership skills. It enhances my communication skills. It's a win-win situation, hopefully. But you get out of it as much as either of you put in. Garbage in, garbage out.
Flap your trap Fridays is the
Yeah.
Is that going to catch on then? So it's not fill your cup Fridays, it's flap your trap Fridays.
I love that. I'm going to use that now, Claire.
I'm just on the IPO office, seeing if it's trademarked, just in case I can. No, I like that a lot. I guess we haven't got long left. There's five minutes left until we conclude, and therefore I will ask anybody if they have any questions to please put them in the chat so we can cover them. But are there any other additional points? We've discussed that mentors come in all different shapes and sizes. They can be formal, they can be informal. You have to have an objective as something which is value add, but ideally on both sides. We want people to be positive, resilient. Don't expect that every mentor you ever ask to help you will be there to help you. It's not personal. It's just one of those things. And a great way of going about it is, I think John's words were networking. Are there any additional points that's worth the panel sharing until other questions might come in, if so?
I think so. One of the things that I think is missed by sort of mentoring programs is the benefit to the organisation as well. Because in sort of, they tend to be formal mentoring programs, but you get better employee engagement, you get employee satisfaction. They're happier because there's somebody who's got time to listen to them. Time is the most precious thing we have these days, I think. And often, to be honest, managers don't have time for their staff, which I think is appalling. And the mentors sort of, can fill that gap. So I think, again, it's just a win-win for mentee, mentor, and the organisation they both work for.
I'm happy to add something here, Ricky. I think the other thing that hasn't been talked about a lot is, I think mentors can have an evolutionary track throughout your life. So I've had a mentor since I joined Unilever around 30 years ago, and I've been in touch with him. He's now very senior at a completely different company, basically retired, but he's still a mentor to me. And the time effort, you know, there was probably a 5 or 10 year period where we had almost no contact, and then it rekindled itself like friendship. So I think the comparison to friendship isn't it. So sorry, not to confuse it. A mentor is not a friend necessarily, right? They're very different roles, but the way you maintain the relationship, so back kind of to this concept of relationship, can change over time. And you have mentors that come in and out of your life, as you have mentees that may come in and out of your life. And it's an interesting thing to build this network of people that can help you over time. And it goes back to having that resource that you're building through networking, which develops your relationships with other humans, right? That's the basic point here.
Mark, looking at the relationships between humans, I think if we all look back in time, you're never going to remember a particular time you had a meeting and particular things that were said. You're always going to remember how you felt in those scenarios. So I think I always keep using the term internally in our businesses, a moment in time. How do we create moments in time that people always remember? And I think that's a really important thing going into these relationships, because you will remember the way that things made a difference. And one thing that I would say, which is a really nice bit of courtesy, is, are people connected to their mentors or mentees on LinkedIn? It's a very small thing, but actually that opens up bigger networks and other mentors in the future. And if you've had a positive impact, somebody's made an impression on you, have you thought about giving them a testimonial or a recommendation, I think is the word, on LinkedIn? A mentor will never say, can you put me a recommendation on LinkedIn because it will look really good for my network? No mentor will really say that unless they're asked to say that. But you actually naturally going to basically appreciate them, saying what a difference they made to you, and that being showcased on their profile. Firstly, it opens up their network to you more so. Secondly, it's amazing courtesy, and you will leave that moment in time with the mentor as much as they might have left with you. So just think of the things you do to make people feel special, and that will really make a big difference long term.
Yeah, it's the small things. I like that moment in time piece. I guess the words of advice I would give, and I talked about a tribe earlier, is build and treasure your trusted tribe. So whether they're your advisors that you will go to as a sounding board and will challenge you in various decisions, whether it is your formal mentors, whether it is your informal mentors. I've been a mentor for people and I haven't known until they've gone, oh yeah, because you're my mentor. Am I? I thought you would just call me when you're going, struggling with this, can you help me? So, build that tribe of mentors, role models, heroes, coaches, advisors, nurture them, use them on Flap Your Trap Fridays, and, build your network around them. They're the people who will support you through your career.
Brilliant. Thank you, Claire.
And, I just think, we're all talking about the life sciences industry, but look outside of your industry as well. So a friend of mine who's actually a quite senior Crown Prosecution Service employee had a newly promoted solicitor in his team who was struggling with leadership and management. And he just sort of said, would you mind sort of giving us some advice? I ended up mentoring her for about 6 months. And I'm very proud to say that, it transformed her, the way she viewed her job, because she'd never really had any formal management training, how to manage people and what the difference between management and leadership is. And, in 6 short months, I was able to impart my experience of that throughout the years. And actually, she came back to me later and said, it just transformed the way I actually went about my new job. So it was great, gave me great satisfaction. Nothing to do with the life sciences industry, but actually just imparting the knowledge and experience I've gained over the years in that industry to help somebody else.
Perfect, thank you. I've seen Jasmine pop up now, so I'm going to thank everybody on the panel for your insights, for your personal stories, and to Claire for flapping her trap and for us all creating moments in time. So thank you, and I guess I'll pass over to Jasmine because I can see you popped up, so I'm sure you're going to close us down.
Thanks, Ricky, and thank you, just to echo what Ricky said, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and some really great advice throughout the session. Mentoring is immensely valuable, and we'd love it if more of you wanted to get involved in our initiative, so please feel free to reach out about that. So our next session, which is the final session of the conference, it will start at 3:30 and it's on the topic of fishing in a global pond, which is all about recruiting and seeking work abroad. So we'd be delighted if you were able to join us for that. And then at 5 o'clock, we do have our Bio Wednesday session, which is part of the conference as well. So again, we'd love it if you were able to join us. Voting has also closed now for the Life Science Inspiration of the Year Award. So join us for the next session to find out who our winner is. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Cheers,
guys.
everyone. Bye.
Thank you.